So, CV, it's great to be here with you. Usually you're on this side of the table asking questions. Today I get a chance to poke into your life a little bit, and we're excited to find out more about something you're doing to celebrate the completion of your first novel. Both of us are fairly new in the novel writing world, and I think it's wonderful that you've taken a step to note this significant accomplishment of finishing your first book by having something called a book party. Is that right?
I did, and it was absolutely the most phenomenal event. And all I can say is what I think of a book party as is that it's beyond beta readers. It's something that we do in my writers group that I have every week. And when anybody completes a novel or a manuscript, they can ask to have a book party.
Wonderful.
And
Before you get into all the details, let's go back in time a bit and tell us what your background is as a writer.
well, actually, I'm a complete novice. And this book that I wrote, I've been planning on writing since 2001. This was the first time I had read about the people in my book. And at that point, I thought this would make a great, great novel. And, I had 3 little kids and I was working, so I never got around to it. So in 2018, I had more time on my hands because my kids were grown and my last one was in college. And I'm like, oh, this is a great time to start writing. So I sat down at the computer and I wrote 2 paragraphs and realized I had no clue what I was doing. I know I'm a college graduate, but I never ever had a creative writing class. So I'm sure a lot of people are in the same boat as I am. They want to write a book, but they don't know where to start.
Right.
And so, yeah, so I got lots and lots of books on craft. I read tons of articles on the internet, watched a gazillion YouTube videos.
Were you
And
writing through that whole process, or did you stop writing and do all your research first?
I stopped writing because I knew I had no idea what I was doing. And so first I had to even figure out what to do because I was like, okay, I'm two paragraphs in and now I don't know what to say. So it's a whole process of learning how to outline and, learning how to structure plot. There's just so much to it, developing your characters. And I'd never, ever even taken any class about it. So there was a lot to learn.
Sure. So you learned how to do it, and then how long did it take you to actually write the book once you felt like you were comfortable enough with the craft to go back into the writing mode?
I think it probably took me about a year, and then I did what they tell you to do. I printed it out and stuck it in a closet and didn't look at it for several months and pulled it out, and I'm like, wow, I am a really bad writer.
Oh, but at least you didn't put it back in the closet at that moment, right?
Yeah, well, thankfully, and I can't even remember who it is. I don't know. They have some ad where someone says, the good part is in the rewrite. That's when it gets good. Everybody's first draft is bad. So, yeah. So then I started the rewrite and rewrote it and then rewrote it again. Because I mean, with every time you go through it, you just get better and, see your flaws, figure out your plot a little better.
And don't you find you know what the story you want to tell is more? You get a clearer vision of not just all the information you've gathered, but what the story itself should be.
Oh, yeah. Even I've been talking to another guy in my group that's working on his book, and I'm like, you just have to get to the end because a lot of times it's like you don't know you're kind of stuck earlier, but it's like maybe when you get to the end, you know exactly what needs to be there. Getting to the end is really important.
I agree. I think it's super important, and it drives all those revisions afterwards.
Oh, for sure.
To know what your ending is. So
and points you to what you need to do more research on too.
Right. Where the gaps are, what isn't working.
Yeah.
So how long did that process take? The revision process, would you say?
Well, I was planning to have this rewrite that I did in 2020. I was expecting that to take all year. And then COVID hit, and I said, there is absolutely no excuse since I'm not working to not push this as fast as I can. Yeah, so I pushed that up to like 6 months. I think I finished in July. And then, of course you need to go through and do a bunch of editing and stuff. So I did that too. And so I think I've been working on it for 3 years.
That seems short to me. That's great. You're a speed writer. For a big historical novel. Your novel is a big family saga. Set in what period again?
It's in the 15th century, during the War of the Roses, and goes into the rise of the House of Tudor.
Yeah, so not just a small novella. This is a big, deep, multifaceted, many-character novel.
Yes, and it's quite complex. A complex history.
Something worth celebrating. So now tell us about the book party and how that came to be, what a book party is, and what it did for you.
So the group that I joined, it just happens to be one of the things that they do is that when someone finishes their book, because I mean, it's a big thing for anybody to actually get finished. Some people will say, hey, you know what, I want to read your book, and the point is you give them a certain time to read it, and then we all get together and talk about it. And the point of it is not to tell you about how great your book is. It's just to tell you everything that's wrong with it.
Oh,
yeah. So
that sounds like a terrible party, actually.
It's fabulous. But you know what? The funny thing is that I can go into it knowing that I don't know anything, and I'm an amateur, and I want to learn. And it's like, give it to me. And and I find it very inspiring to have people. I mean, it wasn't that they hated the story, it was just you need to know where your plot holes are and where your characters aren't working, and so it was really fabulous.
And you did this over Zoom given COVID, or were you in person with each other?
I had 3 people here and 1 person over Zoom, so I was actually able to record most of it.
Oh, that's great.
So I got to watch it again.
That's helpful, yeah.
Yeah, it was really helpful because it's hard to take notes that fast.
And had they been exposed to a good portion of the novel through the writing group already or not?
They had been exposed to several of the chapters, but not any of the really good plot stuff and where anything was going. They had kind of, what was coming up, but they didn't actually know what would be happening. So I had written fast enough and enough that I could at least keep that part of the book like a surprise.
And even I'm sure if they'd had bits and pieces, it's an entirely different thing to read everything all together.
Yes.
To see how it flows from one chapter to another, right?
Yeah. But it was an amazing experience. But every time you let somebody read your work, it just really inspires those creative juices.
You think it's the act of being brave like that and exposing your work to an outside critic, or is it that they give feedback that you just can't get in any other way? What do you think makes it magic to expose your book like that? Let someone read it.
I do think it's the feedback, because people are like, well, this isn't working and that isn't working, and then for some reason your brain just starts thinking it. And even though we talked about certain sections of the book and there are certain parts that they didn't have any issues with, I'm like, I'm going to go back and change that, because I think that I could make this seem stronger and more compelling.
Great. And I assume you also got in your book party compliments for things that worked within the book.
A few. But the point of the book party is actually not to give you compliments. It's, to help you strengthen it. I'm not going to improve if people are only telling me, oh, it was really awesome, it was really good. I need people to point out, oh, the character's not well developed enough, or, what, this person, there's no more use for this character. Why is this character still here? So we actually came with some really good ideas on I have a lovely character that they just love, but we decided that she needed to be killed off, and it could be very traumatic to the story.
But also free up space for other things to happen in the story if she exits stage left.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So does that mean lots of revision going forward, or did it discourage you about going back into the revision process, or make you excited to fix things?
I'm actually excited because I know that, well, at least in my opinion, I think it's going to strengthen the whole piece and make it more interesting. One of the other things, though, that I really picked up that was really, really good for me is people really compliment me on the end of my book. So the last 150 pages, it's almost unputdownable because it gets very exciting. And so what they told me is like, we know exactly where the story is going. We just don't know how we're going to get there. Right. And so it's kind of like, that's kind of like a romance. It's not a romance, but you know the two people are going to get together. It's just, how does it happen? And so my book is actually two different parts. And so the first part, I didn't have that question that needed to be answered down. And, you hear all the time about people starting their book too soon. So I was very, very cautious about that. Well, the truth is they started it too late. And so I'm adding a new chapter, beginning chapter, so that question is very, very clear for the first half of the book on what is actually going to be going on.
Right. And there must be some relief to know you don't really need to tinker with the ending too much then.
Well, the ending just is what it is because the people are real. So I'm actually dealing with real events, but it's, how the people behave and, what they say and all that.
The last 100 pages or so, they're in place now. That part you won't have to revise so much.
Just a little bit, but even with the revisions, it's not going to be, the main structure of the book is there, and so a lot of it's going to be, smaller little tweaks.
Great.
Thankfully.
Good. So if someone wanted to throw a book party, what would you suggest they do? What are the basic features of a book party? How would you set one up? And what do you think are essential elements of a good book party?
Well, I think that you need to have somebody who has experience critiquing, which is why it's great that I did it through my book club. And I just found them on meetups where I was like, well, where can I find one? But this one I found, and they've been around for, I think, 10 years. You just need to have people, I think, that are used to it and that they understand that you can take it. And really, it's a commitment on their part, too.
Sure. Had you been in a book party before? Had you critiqued somebody else's?
I haven't yet.
And do you think that number is good? Just 3 or 4 people, so it's not too overwhelming?
Yeah, originally it was going to be 8 people. And I think that would have been a bit much because people actually can have a lot to say. To try and double the number would have been maybe double the time. So I think it was about 3 or 4 hours.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was just wonderful. I'm very happy that there were even 4 people that were willing to take it on.
And a real gift. That's a wonderful thing, a generous thing to give to a fellow author, I think. Both the time to read it and then develop a critique that would be useful for the author.
Yeah, that's why I call it, beyond beta readers, because it's like, when you have a beta reader, they write their comments and as in depth, there's not a back and forth conversation. So it was wonderful to be able to talk back and forth and maybe draw a little bit more out and get great feedback. And like I said, that always inspires my creative juices.
It's the old wheels turning. Terrific. Well, that sounds like a wonderful experience and something I'd like to duplicate in my own life. And I'm sure others who are watching will feel the same way. So thank you for sharing your book party with us.
Thanks, Catherine.